I just needed my birth certificate. That was it. My mom froze. I'll find it later. Something felt off. So I looked myself. Found a locked drawer, my name inside. It wasn't a birth record. It was. Something about that pause didn't sit right. It wasn't long, maybe a second or two, but it felt heavy. Like she was deciding something instead of just answering me. I laughed it off in the moment, said, okay, and went back to scrolling through my emails at the kitchen table. But the feeling didn't go away. I work as an executive assistant in a corporate office in downtown Seattle, and HR had been on me all week about submitting missing documents. It was one of those boring things you keep putting off until it suddenly matters. So yeah, I needed my birth certificate. That was it. Nothing dramatic. Except now it felt like it was. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that moment in my head. The way my mom looked at me, the way her voice dropped just slightly before she answered. It didn't match the situation. It should have been simple. Where's my birth certificate? Oh, it's in the drawer, I'll grab it. That's what normal would have sounded like. Instead, I got hesitation. So I got up. My parents' house hadn't changed much since I moved out. Same furniture, same layout, same quiet hum at night. My dad, Michael, had probably already gone to bed. He always did around 10. My mom, Karen, would either be reading or half asleep with the TV on low volume. Their office was at the end of the hallway. The door was closed, but not locked. It never was. I stood there for a second before opening it. I remember thinking, this is stupid. You're overthinking this. Just ask her again tomorrow. But I opened the door anyway. The room smelled like paper and that faint artificial lavender my mom liked. Everything was exactly where it always was. Desk against the wall, shelves lined with binders, a small lamp in the corner. Nothing about it looked like it was hiding anything, which somehow made it worse. I went straight to the filing cabinet first. That's where normal documents would be. Taxes, insurance, school records. I flipped through folders, scanning labels. Nothing with my name. I checked again, slower this time. Still nothing. That's when I noticed the drawer in the desk. It wasn't unusual. My dad used it all the time. But it was the only one that was locked. I'd never really thought about it before because there was no reason to. Every family has a place where they keep important stuff. Still, something about it stood out now. The key wasn't even hidden well. It was in a small dish on top of the bookshelf, mixed in with random things, loose change, a couple of paper clips, old keys that probably didn't even belong to anything anymore. If this was supposed to be a secret, it wasn't a very careful one. I picked up the key and just held it for a second. This was the point where I could have stopped. Put it back. Gone to bed. Asked my mom again in the morning and pretended I hadn't thought twice about it. But I didn't. I unlocked the drawer. Inside were neatly stacked folders. More organized than the filing cabinet, actually. Labels written in my dad's handwriting, clean, precise, all caps. Medical. Insurance. Legal. Normal things. I started flipping through them, trying to keep my breathing steady even though I didn't know why I felt nervous. It was just paperwork. That's all this was supposed to be. Then I saw my name. Emily Clark. I pulled the folder out. It felt heavier than it should have. I sat down in the chair before opening it, like my body already knew I needed to be steady for whatever I was about to see. The first page wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a birth certificate. It was a document with a different header. Legal formatting. Typed official, not something you'd mistake for anything casual. I scanned the first few lines. Then I read them again. Then a third time, slower. My name was there. My date of birth was there. But the section that listed mother didn't say Karen Clark. It said Michelle Lewis. I remember my brain trying to correct it automatically. Like I had misread it. Like maybe it was a middle name or something that got typed wrong. So I flipped to the next page. And the next. And the next. Every single one confirmed the same thing. Adoption paperwork. Signed. Finalized. Filed years ago. There was a signature from Michael Clark. There was a signature from Karen Clark. And there was a line that said biological mother with a name I had never seen in my life. Michelle Lewis. My hands started shaking so badly I had to put the papers down. I didn't feel angry. That's the part that still confuses me when I think about it now. I didn't feel betrayed right away. I didn't feel anything sharp or explosive. I felt empty. Like something inside me had quietly dropped out from under everything else. I sat there in that chair, in that quiet room, holding proof that the story I had always believed about myself wasn't complete. And, suddenly, things I had never questioned before started lining up in my head in a way I couldn't ignore. The way I never really looked like anyone in my family. My dad's dark hair, my brother Andrew's exact same features, my sister Ashley looking like a younger version of my mom. And then me lighter, different, always the one people would politely say, you must take after someone else. My mom used to laugh when people said that. She'd say, oh, she gets it from my side, and move on quickly, like it wasn't worth explaining. I never pushed it. I didn't want to make things awkward. Even birthdays started replaying differently in my head. Andrew getting a car at 18. Ashley getting a full weekend trip with her friends. Me getting thoughtful gifts, things I liked, but always slightly smaller, slightly more practical. At the time, I told myself it didn't matter. Now it felt like it meant something. Even family stories. The way they'd talk about when we were younger or remember when we used to, and I'd be there, listening, but not really part of it. Like I had joined the story halfway through without realizing it. No one ever excluded me. But I was never fully inside it either. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the name. Michelle Lewis. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel connected to me in any way. It was just a stranger's name on a piece of paper. But it was also the only thing in that moment that felt completely honest. I don't know how long I was in that room. Long enough for the house to feel quieter than it already was. Long enough for the weight of what I was holding to settle in properly. Eventually, I put the papers back exactly how I found them. I locked the drawer. I put the key back in the dish. I stood there for a second, just looking at everything, trying to see it the way I had seen it a few hours earlier. Normal. Safe. Uncomplicated. It didn't look different. But it felt completely different. I went back to the guest room and didn't sleep at all. I just stared at the ceiling, replaying everything in my life with this new information sitting underneath it, changing the meaning of things I hadn't even realized mattered. And somewhere between midnight and morning, one thought kept repeating itself, getting louder every time. If this was true, then why didn't they ever tell me? I didn't confront them the next morning. That's what I thought I would do. That's what makes sense when you find something like that. You walk into the kitchen, drop the papers on the table, and demand answers. But I didn't. I acted normal. And that scared me more than anything. I sat at the kitchen counter while my mom made coffee like she always did, moving around like nothing had changed. My dad was reading something on his phone, half paying attention to whatever morning news was playing on TV. It was the same routine I had seen 1,000 times. Did you sleep okay? My mom asked without looking at me. Yeah, I said. It came out too easily. That was the moment I realized something was really wrong, not with them, but with me. I had just found out something that should have shaken everything, and I was sitting there pretending like I didn't know. I watched her for a second longer than usual, waiting for something. A sign. Guilt. Nerves. Anything. Nothing. She handed me a cup of coffee like she always did. I'll look for your birth certificate later today, she said casually. I nodded. Okay. That sentence sat between us like it meant something completely different now. Because I already knew she wasn't going to find it. Or maybe she would, but it wouldn't be the truth. I left not long after that and drove back to my apartment in Seattle. The traffic felt louder than usual. Every red light lasted too long. I kept gripping the steering wheel like I needed something solid to hold onto. I kept thinking about the papers. Not just what they said, but what they didn't say. There wasn't much about Michelle Lewis. Just a name. A signature. A location tied to Denver, Colorado. No explanation. No story. No reason. Just proof. By the time I got home, my phone had already buzzed twice. My mom. Hey, I found your birth certificate. I'll bring it by later. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, you don't have to. I already handled it. That was the first lie I told after finding out the truth. It felt strange how easy it was. I went through the rest of my day like I was on autopilot. Emails, meetings, small talk. At one point, my HR manager, Susan Wilson, stopped by my desk. Hey, Emily, just checking in on that document, she said, leaning slightly against the divider. Yeah, I'll get it to you soon, I said. She smiled. No rush, just need it on file. I nodded, but I barely heard her. Because suddenly, that document wasn't just paperwork anymore. It was proof of something I didn't understand yet. That night, I met up with Jessica Taylor at a small cafe near my apartment. It was the kind of place we always went to when one of us had something to vent about. Nothing fancy. Quiet enough to talk without feeling like anyone was listening. She took one look at me and frowned. Okay, what's wrong? Nothing, I said automatically. She didn't even respond. Just raised her eyebrows and waited. I exhaled slowly. I found something yesterday. What kind of something? I hesitated. Even saying it out loud felt like making it more real. I found paperwork, I said finally. In my parents' office. Okay. I wasn't supposed to see it. That got her attention. What was it? She asked. I looked down at my hands. Adoption papers. There was a pause. Not a long one, but enough. Wait, she said carefully. Like, yours? I nodded. She leaned back slightly, like she needed space to process it. And they never told you? No. Ever? No. The word felt heavier that time. She was quiet for a second. That's not small, Emily. I know. Do your siblings know? I swallowed. I don't know yet. But something in my chest told me they did. Jessica leaned forward again. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said honestly. I thought I'd be angry, but I'm not. I just feel off. Off how? Like, everything makes sense now, but in a way I didn't want it to. She didn't interrupt me, so I kept going. I always felt like I didn't fit. Not in a dramatic way, just small things. And now it's like, okay, there's a reason for that. But instead of feeling better, it just makes me feel worse. Jessica nodded slowly. Because they didn't tell you. Yeah. I looked up at her. It's not the adoption that bothers me. I don't care about that part. It's the fact that everyone around me might have known something about me that I didn't. That's a big might, she pointed out. I shook my head slightly. It doesn't feel like a might. It feels like a probably. She studied my face for a second. You think they all knew? I don't know, I said again, but it sounded weaker this time. Because the more I thought about it, the more certain I felt. We sat there in silence for a bit. Then she asked, are you going to ask them? I let out a small, tired laugh. Yeah, I have to. When? I stared at my coffee. Soon. But even as I said it, I knew I wasn't ready. Because asking meant hearing the answer. And I wasn't sure I was prepared for what that answer would be. That night, back in my apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about something Jessica said. They didn't tell you. It sounded simple when she said it. But it wasn't simple. Because not telling me wasn't a one-time decision. It was something they chose every day. Every birthday. Every family dinner. Every conversation about our past. They had hundreds of chances to tell me. And they didn't. I sat on my couch, phone in my hand, staring at my contacts. Mom. Dad. Andrew. Ashley. All of them right there. All of them people I had trusted my entire life. And for the first time, I felt something shift. Not anger. Not yet. Just distance. Like I was already standing outside of something I used to belong to. I didn't call them that night. I didn't text. I just sat there, holding my phone, realizing something I couldn't unsee anymore. If they had hidden this from me my entire life, what else didn't I know? And how many of them already knew the truth about me before I ever did? I went back 2 days later. I told myself it was for closure. That I just needed to look at the papers again, this time properly, without shaking hands and a racing head. But that wasn't the real reason. The real reason was I needed to be sure. Because part of me, this stupid, desperate part, kept hoping I misunderstood something. That I misread a name. That there was some explanation I hadn't thought of yet that would make everything go back to normal. There wasn't. I waited until the house would be empty. My mom had a school event that afternoon and my dad worked late most days. I knew their schedules well enough that I didn't have to guess. When I parked outside, everything looked exactly the same. Same driveway, same front yard, same quiet street where nothing ever seemed to happen. It almost made me turn around. But I didn't. I let myself in with a spare key they'd given me years ago. It felt wrong using it now, like I was crossing into something I didn't belong to anymore. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked straight to the office without stopping anywhere else. No hesitation this time. No second guessing. I already knew what I was going to find. The key was still in the same place. That bothered me more than it should have. Like whatever this was, it had never been treated like a real secret. Just something I wasn't supposed to question. I unlocked the drawer again. Same folders. Same neat labels. Same order. Everything exactly how I left it. I pulled out the folder with my name on it and sat down. This time, I didn't rush. I read everything. Every page. Every line. Every signature. It wasn't just adoption paperwork. It was detailed. Dates, legal filings, transfer of custody. There were notes about placement, background information, timelines. I didn't recognize any of it. Except my own name. And hers. Michelle Lewis. There were a few details I hadn't fully processed the first time. Her age at the time of my birth. The hospital listed. Denver, Colorado. There was even a line about voluntary relinquishment. I stared at that phrase longer than anything else. Voluntary. She gave me up. I didn't know how to feel about that. I flipped to the back of the folder, hoping for something more. A letter. A note. Anything that felt human. There was nothing. Just signatures. Just decisions. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling, trying to piece together something that made sense. 27 years. That's how long this had existed. 27 years of my parents knowing something about me that I didn't. 27 years of choosing not to say anything. I don't know what made me do it, but I started looking through the rest of the drawer. If this was here, what else was? There were folders for my siblings too. Andrew Clark. Ashley Clark. I hesitated. Then I opened Andrew's. Birth certificate. Straightforward. Names matched. No additional paperwork. Nothing unusual. Same with Ashley. That confirmed it. No confusion. No shared situation. No, we adopted all of you and just never talked about it. Just me. I closed the folders slowly and put them back exactly where they were. That feeling came back again. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Because this wasn't an accident. This wasn't something they forgot to mention once, and then it got too awkward to bring up later. This was deliberate. They knew the difference between my paperwork and my siblings. They knew what it meant. And they decided I didn't need to know. I sat there, trying to think of any version of this that didn't feel like a betrayal. Maybe they thought they were protecting me. Maybe they were waiting for the right time. But what was the right time? 18? 21? 25? I was 27. At what point does waiting just become never planning to tell? My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost ignored it. But I checked. Ashley. Hey, are you coming to dinner this weekend? I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I typed back maybe. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Mom's making that thing you like. That thing. She didn't even name it. Just assumed I'd know. And I did. Because I'd grown up in that house, eating those meals, being part of that routine. Except now it felt like I had been part of it under completely different terms than everyone else. I locked the drawer again, put the key back, and stood there for a second longer than I needed to, trying to figure out what I was supposed to do with all of this. Because knowing the truth didn't automatically give me a way to handle it. It just made everything heavier. When I walked out of the house, it didn't feel like leaving home. It felt like leaving a place I thought was mine, and realizing it never fully was. I sat in my car for a while before starting the engine. My phone was still in my hand. Ashley's message still open. Dinner this weekend. Normal. Like nothing had changed. I could go. Sit at the table. Eat the food. Laugh at the same jokes. Pretend I didn't know. Or I could say something. Ask the question I had been avoiding since the moment I saw those papers. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening the longer I thought about it. Because I already knew something that made the decision harder. If I asked them, there was a chance I wouldn't like the answer. And there was a bigger chance that they would finally tell me the truth. And once they did, there would be no going back. I didn't plan some dramatic confrontation. No speech. No build-up. No moment where I stood there shaking and said everything perfectly. It just happened. I went to dinner. That's how it started. Sunday night. Same as always. I walked into the house and everything felt painfully normal. My mom was in the kitchen, moving around like she always did, my dad sitting at the table scrolling through his phone, Ashley already there, talking about something I wasn't really listening to. Andrew showed up a few minutes after me. Hey, he said, like nothing had changed. Hey, I said back. I don't know what I expected. Some kind of shift. Some kind of tension in the room that matched what was in my head. There wasn't any. We sat down to eat. My mom smiled at me. I made your favorite. I nodded. Thanks. I took a bite and couldn't taste anything. They talked. About work. About school. About something my dad saw on the news. Normal conversation. Familiar rhythm. And I just sat there, listening, feeling like I was watching a version of my life that didn't belong to me anymore. At some point, Ashley laughed at something Andrew said, and my mom looked around the table like she always did, like this was her perfect moment. That's when I said it. Why didn't you tell me? The room went quiet. Not slowly. Not awkwardly building into silence. Just cut off. 4 people looked at me. My mom blinked. Tell you what. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even change my tone. I found the papers, I said. That was it. That's all it took. Everything shifted. My mom's face changed first. It dropped. Not confusion. Not surprise. Recognition. My dad straightened slightly in his chair, like he was preparing himself for something he had always known might happen. Andrew looked between them. Ashley froze. I reached into my bag and pulled the folder out. I placed it on the table. Why didn't you tell me I was adopted? My mom let out a sound I had never heard from her before. It wasn't just crying. It was like something broke inside her all at once. Emily, she started, but her voice collapsed halfway through my name. My dad stepped in immediately. Calm. Controlled. We were going to tell you, he said. I looked at him. When? He didn't answer right away. Emily, we wanted to wait for the right time, he added. I let out a small breath. I'm 27. Silence. That number hung in the air like something heavy. My mom covered her face, crying harder now. We didn't want you to feel different, she said through her hands. That hit something in me. Different. I repeated. I already felt different. That was the first time my voice cracked. Not loud. Just enough. My dad shook his head slightly. You're not different. You're our daughter. Nothing about that changes. It does to me, I said. He opened his mouth like he was going to argue, then stopped. I looked at Ashley. Did you know? She froze. Her eyes flicked toward our parents for half a second. That was enough. How long? I asked. She swallowed. Since I was, 12. The words landed hard. 12. She had known for 10 years. Mom and Dad told us not to bring it up, she added quickly, like that made it better. I looked at Andrew. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, I knew too. I nodded slowly. Something inside me went quiet. Not explosive. Not emotional in the way you'd expect. Just quiet. Because in that moment, it became very clear. I was the only one who didn't know. The only one. I looked back at my parents. You told them, I said. My dad tried to explain. We thought it would be easier if. For who? I cut in. He stopped. My mom lowered her hands, her face red, eyes swollen. We were trying to protect you. From what? I asked. She didn't answer. I waited. Nothing. I gestured toward the folder. From this? From knowing where I came from? From knowing who I am? You know who you are, my dad said firmly. I shook my head. No. I know who you told me I was. That landed. I could see it in the way he leaned back slightly, like he didn't have a response ready for that. Andrew let out a small, uncomfortable laugh. I mean, does it really change anything? I turned to him slowly. Yeah, I said. He shrugged. You're still you. You still grew up here. It's not like. It changes everything, I said, cutting him off. He went quiet. Because it did. It changed every memory. Every moment where I felt like something didn't fit. Every time I told myself I was overthinking things. Every time I ignored that feeling in my gut that something wasn't quite right. All of it suddenly made sense. And none of them had thought I deserved to know. I looked back at my mom. What about her? I asked. She blinked. What? Michelle Lewis. The name felt strange in my mouth. Like it didn't belong there. My mom's expression shifted again. Something more complicated this time. That's not important, she said quickly. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Not important. I felt something tighten in my chest. That's my biological mother, I said. How is that not important? We didn't think it mattered, she said. That was it. That was the moment something finally broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a clean, sharp snap. Because it mattered. It mattered to me. It was my identity. And they had decided it wasn't important enough to tell me. I sat there, looking at all of them. My family. Or at least, the people I had always called that. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was part of them at all. I felt like I had been placed there. Like I had been included in something everyone else understood except me. And now that I finally understood it, I didn't know what I was supposed to do with it. I didn't storm out right away. That's what people expect when something like that happens. Someone stands up, knocks their chair back, says something dramatic, and leaves. I stayed. And somehow, that made it worse. No one spoke for a few seconds after my mom said, we didn't think it mattered. It just sat there. Heavy. Final. Like that was the answer they had settled on years ago, and they didn't even realize how wrong it sounded until it was too late. I looked around the table again. Same people. Same house. Same dinner. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. What else? I asked quietly. My dad frowned slightly. What do you mean? What else don't I know? No, Emily, my mom started, but I shook my head. I'm serious, I said. Because if you could keep something like this from me for my entire life, how am I supposed to believe there isn't more? There isn't, my dad said quickly. Too quickly. I held his gaze for a second longer than usual. Okay, I said. But I didn't believe him. Not really. Ashley shifted in her seat. You're acting like we lied to you about everything. I looked at her. You did. That's not fair, she said. I let out a small, tired breath. You knew. You all knew. And you all chose not to say anything. We were told not to, she said. And you listened, I replied. She didn't have an answer for that. Andrew leaned forward slightly. Look, I get that you're upset, but you're blowing this up more than it needs to be. I stared at him. Am I? Yeah, he said. You had a good life. Nothing's changed except now you know a detail you didn't know before. A detail. That word hit harder than anything else he'd said. That's not a detail, I said. It kind of is, he shrugged. You're still our sister. I sat back slowly in my chair. And that's when it finally clicked. They didn't see it the same way I did. To them, this was something small. Something technical. Something that didn't change the core of anything. To me, it changed everything. Because it wasn't just about being adopted. It was about being the only one in the room who didn't know. I looked at my mom again. Why didn't you tell me when I was younger? I asked. She hesitated. We thought it would confuse you. So instead, you waited until I was almost 30 and let me find out by accident? I said. Her eyes filled with tears again. That's not how we wanted it to happen. But it is how it happened, I said. My dad leaned forward, his tone softer now. Emily, we love you. That's what matters. I nodded slowly. I'm not questioning that, I said. I'm questioning why you didn't trust me with the truth. That shut him down. Because there wasn't a good answer. Not one that made sense after 27 years. The room went quiet again. And in that silence, I felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Something clearer. I stood up. I think I'm going to go, I said. My mom looked up immediately. Emily, wait. I can't sit here and pretend this is okay, I said. We can talk about it, my dad said quickly. We are talking about it, I replied. But you're not hearing me. That landed. I could see it. They were hearing my words, but they weren't understanding what I meant. Because to understand it, they'd have to admit they did something wrong. And they weren't ready to do that. Can we at least figure this out? My mom asked, her voice breaking again. I paused. For a second, I considered it. Sitting back down. Working through it. Asking more questions. Trying to rebuild something from this. But then I thought about the drawer. The folder. The way everything had been sitting there for years, waiting for me to either find it or never question it. And I realized something. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a choice they made over and over again. Every day. Every year. And I didn't know how to fix something like that. I don't know how to do that right now, I said honestly. My mom started crying again. My dad looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Andrew looked frustrated. Ashley looked uncomfortable. And I just felt tired. So I grabbed my bag and walked out. No one stopped me. Not physically. I heard my mom call my name as I reached the door, but I didn't turn around. Because if I did, I wasn't sure I'd leave. And I knew I needed to. The drive back to my apartment felt longer than usual. Not because of traffic. Just because everything felt heavier. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. Every word. Every reaction. Every moment where I thought maybe they would say something that made it better. They didn't. When I got home, I sat on my couch and stared at my phone. For contacts at the top of my screen. Mom. Dad. Andrew. Ashley. For most of my life, those were the people I would call first for anything. Good news. Bad news. Random thoughts. They were my default. And now I didn't know what they were. I picked up my phone. Opened my messages. Closed it again. I didn't know what to say. Or if I even wanted to say anything. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Mom. Please come back. We can talk. Then another message. I'm sorry. Then another. We love you. I stared at the screen. And for the first time, those words didn't feel like enough. Not because I didn't believe them. But because love wasn't the problem. Trust was. And I didn't know how to rebuild that. I put my phone down. Turned it face down on the table. And sat there in silence. Trying to figure out what my life looked like now that the one thing I had always assumed was stable, wasn't. That night, I didn't block them. Not yet. But I didn't respond either. And somewhere in that quiet space between wanting to answer and choosing not to, I realized I was already starting to let them go. The first week felt strange. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just quiet in a way I wasn't used to. My phone kept lighting up at first. Messages from my mom, mostly. A few from my dad. Ashley sent something short, "Are you okay?" And Andrew sent nothing at all. I didn't answer any of them. Not because I was trying to punish them. I just didn't know what to say that wouldn't turn into the same conversation we already had. And I couldn't do that again. So I let the messages sit there. Unread at first. Then read, but unanswered. Eventually, they slowed down. Not completely. Just enough to feel like the space between us was becoming real. I kept going to work. Same routine. Same office. Same conversations that had nothing to do with anything that actually mattered to me now. At some point during that first week, Susan from HR stopped by my desk again. "Hey, Emily, about that birth certificate." I looked up at her. "I'm working on it," I said. She nodded. "No problem." And that was it. That document that started everything. I still hadn't turned it in. I think part of me avoided it because it meant choosing which version of my identity I was going to present. And I wasn't ready to make that decision yet. A few days later, I met Jessica again at the same cafe. She looked at me carefully. "You look calmer." "I feel quieter," I said. "Did you talk to them?" "Yeah. And?" I let out a slow breath. It didn't go the way I thought it would. "What happened?" "They knew," I said. Her expression changed immediately. "All of them." I nodded. "Everyone. Except me." She leaned back slightly, processing that. "That's a lot." "Yeah. What did they say?" "The usual," I said. "They were going to tell me. They didn't want me to feel different. They didn't think it mattered." Jessica made a face. "Okay, that last one is not great." "No," I said quietly. "It's not." She studied me for a second. "So what now?" I looked down at my hands. "I don't know if I can go back to how things were," I said. "You don't have to," she replied. "I know. But that also means I don't know what I have instead." She didn't answer right away. Because there wasn't a simple answer. Weeks passed. Then months. I stopped expecting messages from them, even though they still came occasionally. Holidays were the hardest. Thanksgiving felt empty in a way I hadn't prepared for. Christmas was worse. I didn't go back. I didn't call. At some point, I blocked their numbers. Not out of anger. Just to stop the constant reminder that something unresolved was still sitting there, waiting for me to deal with it. It felt final. And also relieving. Life didn't magically get better. But it got clearer. I built new routines. Spent more time with Jessica. Started saying yes to things I used to put off. Small changes, but they added up. And then, a few months into all of it, I did something I hadn't been ready to do before. I went back to the paperwork. Not at my parents' house. On my own terms. I had taken pictures of the documents that day without really thinking about it. At the time, it felt like proof. Like I needed something tangible to hold on to. Now it felt like a starting point. Michelle Lewis. Denver, Colorado. Registered nurse. That was all I had. I stared at her name for a long time before doing anything with it. Because looking for her meant opening another door I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. But I did it anyway. Slowly. Carefully. Not expecting much. I didn't find her right away. It took time. Searching, second-guessing, trying different combinations until something matched. And when it finally did, I didn't reach out. Not immediately. I just sat there, looking at a name that had always been part of my story, but never part of my life. And for the first time, I felt like I had a choice. Not about what happened, but about what I did next. It's been a year now. A full year since that night in the office. I haven't spoken to my family. Not once. I've thought about it. More than I expected to. Sometimes it's small things. A random memory. A habit I picked up from my mom. A joke my dad used to make. Moments where I realize how much of who I am still comes from them. And sometimes it's bigger. Life updates. Things I would have told them without thinking before. And now I don't. Not because I hate them. I don't. That's the part that makes this harder. If I hated them, it would be simple. But I don't. I just don't trust them. And I don't know how to rebuild that. They've tried to reach out through other people. My uncle, Robert, called me once, saying my mom still cries about it, that my dad wants to sit down and talk, that I'm still part of the family no matter what. I didn't argue. I just listened. Because I understood their side. I really did. They thought they were protecting me. They thought they were doing the right thing. But understanding it doesn't make it easier to accept. Because at the end of the day, they had my entire life to tell me the truth. And they didn't. So now I'm here. Living a life that feels more honest, but also more uncertain. Trying to figure out what family even means when the one you had doesn't feel the same anymore. I still don't know if I made the right decision. Walking away felt like the only thing I could do at the time. But sometimes I wonder if I gave up too quickly. If there was a way to fix it that I didn't try hard enough to find. Or if staying would have meant pretending I was okay with something I wasn't. I don't have a clear answer. I just know how it felt. Sitting on that floor, holding those papers, realizing I was the only one who didn't know the truth about myself. And I don't know how you come back from that. So yeah, I cut them off. Not because I stopped loving them, but because I didn't know how to trust them anymore. And I still don't know if that makes me wrong, or if it's the only way I could finally be honest with myself.